November 30th, 1989. In the hush before dawn, Manhattan's skyline appears motionless, as though waiting for something extraordinary to occur. An event so unsettling, it would later be whispered about as the mysterious UFO case file that terrified experts. It's an incident that began in the still darkness of that chilly November morning, an unsettling chapter in ufology that would come to be known as the Linda Napolitano abduction, or more famously, the Brooklyn Bridge incident. The time is just after 3 a.m., and Manhattan's skyline seems frozen against the early morning chill. Most of the city sleeps beneath dimly lit windows, the hum of distant traffic barely breaking the silence. Yet, in a 12th floor apartment near the iconic bridge, something extraordinary is about to unfold. Witnesses claim they saw a woman lifted by a beam of light, while the alleged victim later described bizarre medical procedures and a mysterious implant lodged deep within her sinus cavity. Over the years, she has spoken of nightmares and flashbacks, lingering echoes of an event that would reshape her life and puzzle the experts who dared to investigate. But to unravel the countless questions surrounding this chilling abduction story, one that still ignites fierce debate, we must first return to the very moment when the unimaginable became reality. Inside Linda Napolitano's world. Late November 1989, Manhattan, New York City. In an era when the UFO phenomenon was on the cusp of mainstream attention, spurred by popular abduction accounts, few could predict that one of the most polarizing incidents would emerge right in the heart of America's busiest metropolis. The Linda Napolitano case would soon capture headlines, drawing attention to a side of New York not typically associated with small-town rumors or isolated sightings. Situated near the iconic Brooklyn Bridge, Linda Napolitano's apartment stood in a neighborhood buzzing with city life. By day, the streets outside bustled with commuters, food vendors, and the relentless sound of car horns. Tourists snapped photos of skyscrapers while locals hurried to catch the next train or hail a cab. Even in the late 1980s, before smartphones and social media, New York had a global reputation for its fast pace, cultural variety, and no-nonsense attitude. For Linda, life was grounded in that familiar urban routine. She was described as a straightforward individual, not the sort prone to spinning wild tales. Married and living an otherwise ordinary existence, Linda's world revolved around family, work, and navigating the day-to-day grind. But all that normalcy took a turn in the early hours of November 30th, when Linda claimed to experience something far beyond the scope of everyday life. Though few details were initially shared, rumors of a woman floating out of her window began to circulate among those who lived near the bridge or worked the graveyard shift in the vicinity. Even more unsettling were the emerging stories of two men, later referred to only as Richard and Dan, who allegedly witnessed the bizarre event while serving as bodyguards for a high-honor-profile political figure. As whispers of alien encounters swept through curious circles, Linda's name quickly became synonymous with the mysterious. Her tale would soon draw the attention of Bud Hopkins, a prominent ufologist already investigating alleged abductions. For a city steeped in raw, everyday realism, this surreal account of a beam of light piercing the night sky seemed oddly out of place. And yet, beneath the bright lights of Manhattan, the stage was quietly set for one of the strangest abduction stories in modern UFO lore. The abduction unfolds. Linda Napolitano never suspected the early hours of November 30th, 1989, would change her life forever. Around 3 a.m., Manhattan's usual nighttime lull, the distant traffic, the faint hum of the river, lured her to the edge of sleep in her 12th floor apartment near the Brooklyn Bridge. Her husband slept soundly beside her, unaware of what was about to unfold. At first, the disruption was almost imperceptible. Linda felt a prickling in her arms, as if charged with static. She sat up, uncertain whether she was awake or dreaming. Then, a low hum began, so quiet she couldn't tell if it was real or just in her head. With a jolt of alarm, she noticed 3 small figures with gray skin and large black eyes standing by the bed. She tried to scream, but her voice refused to obey. Some invisible force held her in place while her husband slept on, undisturbed. In an instant, a brilliant blue-white light flooded the room. Its glow swept Linda into a beam that defied gravity, lifting her from the bed. She struggled, but her limbs remained paralyzed. Meanwhile, on the street below, 2 men later known as Richard and Dan claimed they saw a woman floating out of an apartment window, encased in an otherworldly radiance. Bodyguards for a notable political figure, they frantically searched for a camera, anything to prove what they were witnessing. Within that beam, Linda felt a disorienting surge of cold and numbness as she drifted through the solid glass window. On the other side, awaited a craft glowing reddish-orange against the night sky. Panic warred with an odd sense of calm that seemed to emanate from the beings. Once inside, the craft's sterile interior was lit by an intense, harsh light. Linda recalled a chemical tang in the air and the distant hum that made her ears ring. The beings guided her to a metallic table with an almost clinical detachment. One pressed a sharp instrument against her nasal cavity, causing a sudden, fierce pain. Linda tried to resist, but her body remained limp. Through teary eyes, she caught the slightest tilt of one alien's head, like a scientist noting a specimen's reaction. Just when the pain and fear reached their height, another flash of light overwhelmed her senses. Linda awoke back in her bed, gasping. Only a few minutes seemed to have passed, yet she felt as though she'd been gone for hours. Her husband slept on. A bruise throbbed on the bridge of her nose, fueling her confusion about whether she'd dreamed it all. Across town, Richard and Dan grappled with the impossible scene they'd witnessed. A figure enveloped in light, passing through a window as though it weren't there. Over the following days, murmurs of a levitating woman near the Brooklyn Bridge crept through late-night circles. Many dismissed it as a hoax or an optical illusion. But for Linda, the sore spot on her nose and the vivid recollections of 3 gray figures refused to fade. The question of what truly happened that night, be it extraterrestrial encounter, shared hallucination, or something else, would soon ignite fierce debate, thrusting Linda into the center of one of ufology's most contentious mysteries. Evidence, theories, and doubts. In the immediate wake of Linda Napolitano's startling account, word spread quietly at first. Though major newspapers didn't flood front pages with her story, smaller UFO-focused publications began to discuss what some were calling the Brooklyn Bridge abduction. Linda herself was both shaken and cautious, unsure how much to disclose publicly. Instead of contacting local law enforcement, she turned to ufologist Bud Hopkins. His interest in abduction phenomena made him one of the few people who wouldn't dismiss her story outright. From the start, Hopkins treated the case like a meticulous investigation. He interviewed Linda multiple times, using hypnosis sessions to uncover details she claimed were buried in her subconscious. While no official agency ran forensic tests on Linda's apartment or the area beneath her window, she insisted physical evidence existed, a small, tender lump in her nasal passage that she believed to be an alien implant. Yet when Hopkins tried to locate or test any alleged implant, results were inconclusive. No definitive physical sample was ever presented to the broader scientific community. The same cloud of uncertainty hung over the testimony of Richard and Dan, the 2 anonymous bodyguards who claimed they witnessed Linda's levitation from street level. According to Hopkins's notes, these men were in the vicinity while protecting a high-profile diplomat. They described seeing a bright beam of light envelop Linda, carrying her out through solid glass. However, their real names were never revealed, and corroborating evidence like security logs or official statements remained out of reach. Skeptics viewed this secrecy as cause for doubt, suggesting that Richard and Dan could be entirely fabricated. Hopkins, however, argued that publicizing their identities might jeopardize national security or lead to personal repercussions. In reviewing Linda's account, many pointed to the complexities of hypnosis-based testimony. Critics noted that hypnotic regression, particularly under an investigator already convinced of extraterrestrial activity, could lead to confabulation, where a person inadvertently constructs false memories. Carol Rainey, Hopkins' former wife, later scrutinized his methods, implying that the case might have been shaped, at least in part, by leading questions and suggestive techniques. She also highlighted inconsistencies in Linda's timeline, fueling the argument that a mix of psychological factors and external influences could have produced, or at least embellished, the abduction narrative. For believers, however, these doubts didn't overshadow the striking parallels between Linda's story and other abduction reports. Descriptions of gray-skinned beings, telepathic communication, and the insertion of a nasal implant. Some speculated that it might have been a genuine extraterrestrial visitation, pointing to an alleged global pattern of identical encounters. Others proposed a clandestine government experiment, perhaps advanced technology that mimicked alien capabilities, while still more theorized that Linda's vivid experience was a manifestation of sleep paralysis, hallucinatory episodes, or a highly convincing hoax. Each hypothesis had its own plausibility, yet none cleanly accounted for all of Linda's specifics, particularly the corroboration from two men claiming first-hand observation. This mysterious case resisted easy resolution. The very details that gave it an air of authenticity, Linda's consistency, the alleged sighting by Richard and Dan, were also the ones that skeptics found impossible to verify. Whether one sees the Brooklyn Bridge abduction as a genuine close encounter or an elaborate tapestry of suggestion and illusion, it remains an enigma in UFO lore. After all, how does one definitively prove or disprove an event that defies conventional logic? The debate continues, propelled by those who believe they've glimpsed the extraordinary and those who remain convinced it's an elaborate fiction. The unresolved mystery. Even decades later, Linda Napolitano's account of the Brooklyn Bridge abduction remains as baffling as it is provocative. No definitive physical evidence was ever produced, yet Linda's story, along with the alleged testimonies of Richard and Dan, never fully faded from public discourse. Did she truly encounter something unearthly, or could her experience be the result of suggestive hypnosis, a psychological phenomenon, or even a carefully orchestrated hoax? For Linda, the events of that night left lingering uncertainties. A tender spot in her nose she believed was an alien implant, recurring nightmares, and a lasting sense that her life had been touched by forces beyond everyday comprehension. Bud Hopkins, and later other researchers, continued to champion her case as proof that alien abductions do occur, even in the bustling heart of Manhattan. Skeptics, however, argue that without verifiable witness identities or hard data, the story floats in a realm of speculation. Ultimately, Linda's experience endures as a testament to humanity's enduring curiosity about the unknown. Could advanced technology, secret experiments, or genuine extraterrestrial contact be at play here? Or is this a reminder of how malleable our memories and beliefs can be? In the city that never sleeps, the mystery remains, leaving us with one haunting question: how much of our reality is truly understood, and how much lingers just beyond our reach? Was Linda Napolitano's experience a genuine brush with extraterrestrials? Or could there be a more grounded explanation hiding in plain sight? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching Mr. Alien Files. If you enjoyed this ufology mystery, continue exploring the unexplained in our next video. Let's keep pushing the boundaries of what we know and what we dare to believe.